Welcome to Unit 7. In Unit 7, we talk about some basic trig stuff. Now, we're going to start with a bunch of vocabulary words. So I have these filled in here. You'll want to fill them out on your notes as well. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is so far with trigonometry, which you should have touched on last year, you've done trig stuff with right triangles, meaning the angles all added to 180 degrees. So if this is A, B, and C, we know that the angles of a triangle all add up to 180. Now, we're actually going to expand that a little bit. Instead of just talking about angles on a triangle, you can also talk about angles on your coordinate plane. So this is that coordinate plane that you've been graphing points on since like junior high. So we could say like put a point here and say that's like -4, 1, right? Oh, looks like -4, 2. There we go. So this is just your coordinate grid that you've been graphing things on, except now we're going to put some angles on it. So a couple things, we're going to call this right here the initial side of the angle. The initial side always goes on the positive x-axis, always, always, always. Then the terminal side is the side that moves. So for example, I could have a terminal side right here, and then this would be my angle to that terminal side. So the terminal side can move anywhere around the circle, and then your angle goes from the initial side to the terminal side. Now, you'll also see that these are labeled here. These are important. So 0 degrees is always right here on the positive x. Then if I go one corner, so that's a right angle, so that would make this one 90 degrees. This is one flat line. A flat line is always 180 degrees. This one is 90 more degrees, 270. And then if we go all the way back around, we end up with 360 degrees. Because there are 360 degrees in a full circle. So we could say this angle right here looks like it might be like 100 degrees because it's a little past 90. So that's how we find angles on a coordinate grid now instead of on a triangle. Now, one last vocabulary word we need to talk about. Well, I guess we have two. First is radian. So a radian is just a different way to measure angles. So for example, if I wanted to measure a distance, I could say I ran 100 feet, or I could say I ran 100 meters. It's just two different ways to measure the same distance. Well, same with degrees and radians. A degree is what we've been used to, but there is a second way to measure that angle, and that's in radians. It's just a different unit of measurement. Now, understand that there's 360 degrees in a circle. There are 2 pi radians in a circle. So we could also fill this in with radians, where this is 0. If all the way around the circle is 2 pi, then halfway around the circle would be pi. Pi, 2 pi. This one would be pi halves radians. And this one would be 3 pi halves radians. They're the same measurement, it's just a different way to measure it. That's radians. Last vocabulary word is this coterminal angles, which are angles that have the same terminal side. So this is one where we have to start to talk about direction. Now, if we go in a counterclockwise direction, like these two purple arrows here, that is known as the positive direction. So any angles that go this direction are positive. If you go clockwise right here, those angles are negative. So if I wanted to go clockwise to this point here, that would actually be negative 90 degrees. And then we would say that these two things right there are coterminal because they're actually the same angle. It's just two different ways to write it. So I could go counterclockwise to get 270 or clockwise to get negative 90. They're the same side here. It's just two different ways to get the same thing. So that's what a coterminal angle is. So now that you have all that vocabulary in place, in the next video, we'll start to apply that vocabulary by finding coterminal angles.